It is my pleasure today to interview the world-renowned Dr. Sigmund Freud. Well, Dr. Freud, I guess the first question on everyone's mind is, how did you get interested in psychoanalysis? I did my undergraduate at the University of Vienna, studying philosophy, physiology, and zoology. After graduation, I spent 6 years in a neurophysiology lab, comparing the brains of humans and frogs. Eventually, I received an MD and became a professor of neuropathology. I had the great idea of going to Paris on a fellowship to study with a big hypnosis expert that demonstrated hypnosis with patients on stage in front of an audience. I found this mind-boggling and decided to turn my work away from neurology research into a practice in psychopathology. After returning to Vienna, I began using hypnosis. I was lucky to find a patient who later became famously known as Anna O. She reacted amazingly well to this therapy. I realized that her symptoms became much less serious as she talked about her memories. This was the start of psychoanalysis for me. In your early work, you introduced seduction theory. Can you explain what it is, why you came up with it, and why you abandoned it later on? Seduction theory stated that repressed emotions and memories of sexual misconduct and abuse during childhood were responsible for hysteria and obsessional neurosis in grown-ups. I came up with the theory after many sessions with my patients, listening to their experiences. Many of them would keep going back to the sexual abuse they had suffered as children. This led me to the conclusion that sexual misconduct was the reason behind my patients' mental health problems. However, later on, I realized that there were inconsistencies in what they were telling me. This led me to conclude that they were not necessarily recalling experiences, but were sometimes creating fantasies or exaggerating their accidents. So, I abandoned the theory a few years after I proposed it. You later introduced personality theory and the concepts of id, ego, and superego to explain the human psyche. What are they, and how do they relate to conscious and unconscious thoughts? I think of the mind as having two parts, conscious or the ego and unconscious. I should say that the unconscious does not include everything that is not conscious. Instead, it is made of the thoughts that are actively repressed from conscious thinking. The unconscious can only be recognized by its effect. For example, slips of the tongue are related to the unconscious since they reveal a person's true feelings about something. Anyway, the unconscious is further divided into the id and the superego. The id contains sexual and aggressive drives and hidden memories and is the impulsive part of the mind. It does not change during a person's life and ignores reality, logic, or the world. It follows the pleasure principle. Every impulse should be satisfied immediately, regardless of consequences. The ego negotiates between the id and the real world. It is the decision-making part of personality and follows the reality principle. It tries to satisfy the id, but in a manner that is not hurtful. Like the id, it looks for pleasure and avoids pain. However, it prefers realistic strategies to obtain pleasure. Note that the ego has no concept of right or wrong. It just wants to satisfy the id without causing harm. One way to see this is to think of the id as a horse and the ego as a rider. The superego takes societal norms into account to control the id's impulses, especially sex and aggression. It has two parts, the conscience and the ideal self. The conscience punishes the ego with feelings of guilt. The ideal self is an imaginary picture of what a person aspires to be. Behaviors that are ideal make us proud. Behaviors that we do not like generate guilt. At birth, the personality is fully id. The ego and superego develop later on through contact with one's parents, school, and societal norms. The three parts work together, each contributing to the person's behavior or personality. That is fascinating. And how do these processes influence our dreams? Dreams are formed in result of two mental processes. The first process involves unconscious forces that create a wish, and the second is a conscious process of censorship that represses the wish. The overall purpose of dreams is to fool this censorship and fulfill our repressed wishes. Say you were to rob a bank because you desperately needed the money. You'd feel guilty about it, right? Well, in your dream, you would more likely come up with a story as to why you were robbing the bank. Probably to give food to the needy or something like that. You would fulfill your wish but have no consequences. Hence, you wouldn't feel guilty. The wish fulfilling part of the dream is many times disguised due to the need to distinguish between manifest and latent content. Manifest content is the plot of the dream, what you remember when you wake up. Latent content is the hidden meaning behind the plot and events. The latent idea is what causes the wish fulfillment. Well, Dr. Freud, I think our time is up. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your thoughts with us. The pleasure is all mine. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about my theories.